Okay, Governor. So, look, we know that Donald Trump figures out ways to get his message out there, whether it's through social media or whatever kind of things that he might say. But there's also another part of running for president, as you well know. The Michigan Republican Party chairman told MarketWatch that the Trump campaign and its allies have made no significant general election investments in the state. And he put it this way, quote, "We've got the skeleton right now. We're going to have to put more meat on it." And there are questions about how much money he'll have to put meat on it. Can Donald Trump win in states like that, those battleground states, if he doesn't have the money for a ground game?
No, you got to have a ground game. I mean, I remember one of the Democrat operatives telling me a few years ago, you know, we don't know how to win elections. We don't know how to go door to door. We don't know how to do things at the local level. She was right. In fact, they didn't win that election. And the same is true now for Republicans. If you have no ground game, if you're not getting out the vote, if you're not talking to your people, you've got a real problem. And Trump's problem is going to continue to be, can he get those independent voters? And what does he do for those Republicans that voted for Nikki Haley, who don't like him? Can he bring them back in the fold? And there's been some interesting stories about the fact that he's making no effort to do that. And that's something I really don't understand. So I don't know where those numbers come from. Look, I think Biden is now doing better. Because he's been traveling, he's been getting better press. His State of the Union's given him some momentum. He's doing better. But at the same time, it's still very, very close in these battleground states. And if Trump is looking for a running mate, I tell you, Chris, I think he should go Caitlin Clark. I mean, then he's guaranteed to win Iowa. He'd win Iowa if he did that. I don't know. I'm not sure she'd say yes. If I were her, I wouldn't say yes. You know, she's got her own franchise, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, she's got the Final Four in the meantime, which happens to be also in the great state of Ohio. But back to politics, Governor. Look, Dan, you know, money means, I'm not going to say everything, but an awful lot in politics. And he's been diverting a lot of his money to his legal woes. And his net worth also, as we mentioned, just dropped by $1 billion when the shares of his social media company tanked. Your colleague at Forbes even notes, quote, his fortune fell by more Monday than any other billionaire aside from Tesla CEO Elon Musk and a Chinese video game tycoon. But what do we really know? Put into context for us Trump's net worth overall.
Well, Trump right now is worth about $6.4 billion. Now, keep in mind that just a month ago, he was worth about $2.3 billion. So he is way, way ahead of where he was in just the last few weeks. And that's because this social media network has gone public and the shares are trading wildly. But it's sort of like being, you know, locked in a cage surrounded by gold bars. You can't really access this money. You know, he has lockup provisions as part of this publicly traded company now, and he has all of this money tied up with his legal woes. Now he's pledged collateral against multiple bonds. So although he's really, really rich, he doesn't have a ton of cash. Certainly not cash that's going to go into his campaign. Not that it was even if he had it available to him. He hasn't put his own money into his campaign since 2016, when he put about $66 million in after saying that he was going to fund the whole thing, which he did not.
Yeah, and we know he couldn't pay his bond. He got it reduced to $175 million. And you and the Forbes team have done some reporting on the California billionaire who helped him get that money. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so the company is called Knight Specialty Insurance Company, and it's part of a group of companies owned by Don Hankey. Now, Don Hankey is a real numbers-focused guy who made his fortune in some private auto lending. So this is a guy who's comfortable striking deals with people who other lenders or other insurance companies might turn away from. In this case, you know, he looked at the collateral, which was cash and investment-grade bonds, and said, this is enough. We're going to get our money back, and we're going to make money on this thing. So sure, let's do the deal. He also, interestingly, has been one of the largest shareholders of a company called Axos Financial, which is the bank that really kind of replaced Deutsche Bank as Trump's lender of choice right after he left the White House. So you have him in two different scenarios, having a financial connection to the institutions that are essentially bailing Trump out when he's in deep financial trouble.
That's so interesting. All right, Governor, you know, Donald Trump sold this image of his wealth, his status, his glamour ever since he came down that escalator. Well, even before, right? That was his whole persona, the Trump brand that he thinks alone is worth billions. You ran against him. Look, we asked this question a lot about whether or not all the changing financial fortunes and questions about his wealth affect voter perceptions. But I wonder if the stronger question is about how he feels when these things happen and how it might impact his own arguably volatile approach to politics. His mood, essentially, Governor.
You know what? There's a lot of things that I could speculate on. His mood and the way he looks at things is one that's beyond my purview. What I would say is there's no indication that he wants to fund his own campaign. The indication is that's why he put Laura Trump in there, because then she came out and said all the contributions are going to go for his legal bills. So there's been no indication that he's going to take any of this money. And I didn't realize there was a lockup provision. In other words, because the company went public, they made a lot of money. He wasn't able to sell because he's locked up for a while. And then later, at some period of time, he'll have access to it. The question is that the shares are trading very wildly, and they're down today. They could be somewhat up tomorrow. I think we've seen the high point of that. You know, I'm not on Wall Street now, but I think we probably have seen the euphoria which pushed that stock price up. But I'm still amazed that he was able to IPO this and have the success he had. And Chris, I got to tell you, I mean, to take an idea that at some point just seemed kind of silly and be able to take it out there to the market and generate wealth is pretty amazing. But I don't expect you're going to see that money going to fund a campaign. I think it's going to go to pay his legal bills and whatever else he wants to spend money on. But, I mean, I don't think people are saying, oh, well, he's now not very rich and therefore I'm not going to vote for him. Again, back to the same thing. Do people view him as stable enough to vote for him? Where are these Republicans, these Haley supporters, and where are the independents?
Governor John Kasich and Dan Alexander, I could talk to you guys for a lot longer. Such fascinating stuff. Thank you both. You going up north to see the big games this weekend, Governor?
I'm going to be glued to the television. That game last night between Iowa and LSU was phenomenal. Both of those young ladies, Angel Reese, and also, and one of my daughter's name is Reese. Angel Reese, my wife said she likes him. I like Caitlin Clark, but watch Paige Beckers with Connecticut.
Yes, sir. I will do it.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.